You open your eyes. The ceiling above you isn't white, it's alive. Soft, bioluminescent patterns ripple across living material, responding to your breathing. The air tastes clean, not filtered clean, living clean. You stretch, and the bed beneath you adjusts, reading muscle tension you didn't know you carried. This is morning in 2226. You swing your legs over the edge. Your feet touch floor that's neither cold nor warm. It remembers you. The entire room remembers you. Not through cameras or sensors invading your privacy, but through something deeper, something grown, not manufactured. You stand and the light shifts. Not because you commanded it, because it knows. Outside your window, the city breathes. It doesn't look like the cities your ancestors knew. There are no concrete canyons, no steel and glass monuments to human ambition. Instead, towers rise like ancient trees, their surfaces covered in cascading gardens. Between them, streams of light move silently. Transportation without violence, movement without sound. You watch a transport pod glide past, carried by forces that would have seemed like magic 2 centuries ago. But this isn't magic. This is Tuesday. You walk to the wall and place your hand against it. The surface ripples, opens. Inside, your clothes wait. They're not sitting in a closet. They're being renewed. Microscopic organisms work through the fabric, removing anything that doesn't belong, restoring anything that degraded. You dress in materials that breathe better than your skin. Fabrics that were never harvested from a field or a factory. They were convinced to grow this way. The kitchen greets you without words. You don't press buttons. You don't scroll through options on a screen. The counter simply knows. A bowl rises from the surface, filled with food that was being assembled at the molecular level while you slept. It's not printed. It's not processed. It's composed. Every nutrient your body needs, arranged in forms that taste like memory, like the strawberries your grandmother described, like bread that never existed but always should have. You eat slowly. Through the window, you see children in the garden plaza below. They're not playing on equipment, they're playing with the environment itself. A child laughs, and a vine responds, growing into a swing in real time. Another runs her hand along a wall, and flowers bloom in her wake, tracking the heat signature of her joy. The plaza teaches them without lessons, guides them without rules. This is education now. You finish your meal, and the bowl dissolves back into the counter. Nothing wasted, nothing discarded. The material returns to potential, waiting to become something else when needed. You move toward the door, but before you reach it, you pause. On a shelf that wasn't there yesterday, something has grown. A small sculpture, delicate and impossible. The apartment created it for you. Not because you asked, because it sensed you needed beauty today. You pick it up, it's warm, alive in some way you don't fully understand and don't need to. You set it back down, and it begins to slowly change color. Pink to amber to gold. It will continue this transformation all day, and tomorrow it will be something entirely different. Or maybe it will have returned to the wall, its purpose complete. The door opens before you touch it. You step into the corridor. It's not a hallway in the old sense. It's more like a pathway through a forest. Living walls curve and spiral upward. Natural light filters down from above, but there's no sun visible. The light comes from everywhere and nowhere. Other people pass you. Some nod, some smile. One person is moving quickly, riding a gentle wave in the floor itself, carried toward their destination by architecture that participates in human urgency. You take the slow path, down and down, through levels that don't feel like floors. Each one is its own ecosystem. At level 40, an elderly man tends to orchids that float in midair, their roots drawing nutrients from humidity itself. At level 30, a group gathers around a pool of liquid silver, watching data swim through it like fish. Information made visible, knowledge you can touch. You reach the ground. The street isn't paved, it's grown, solid but soft, responsive. You begin to walk, joining thousands of others in their daily movement, and the city walks with you. Buildings lean slightly toward the morning light. Trees that aren't entirely trees sway without wind. The boundary between nature and civilization dissolved so long ago that no one remembers when it happened. This is normal now. You head toward your destination, but the journey is the purpose. Every step through this world that your ancestors built without ever seeing. They dreamed of flying cars and robot servants. They got something stranger, something better. They got a world that thinks, that cares, that grows. And you get to live in it, just another person on another morning. In the next era of everything humanity has become, the question isn't what's possible anymore. The question is what you'll choose to do with all this possibility. Your destination is 3 miles away. You don't call a vehicle. You don't summon a ride. You simply walk, and the city flows around you. The pathway beneath your feet begins to move, gently, almost imperceptibly, like a river that carries you forward without asking. Other people stand still, letting the living streets transport them. You prefer to walk. The movement beneath matches your pace exactly, amplifying each step so that one stride becomes 3. This is how distance disappeared. Above you, the sky isn't quite sky anymore. It's a living membrane, stretched between the highest structures, filtering sunlight into something softer, something kinder to human eyes. You remember learning that the atmosphere itself became unstable in the late 21st century, that humans almost broke their own planet, but you also learned what happened next, how humanity didn't abandon Earth, how they healed it instead. The Reformation, they called it, not a war, not a revolution. A fundamental reimagining of what civilization could mean. It started with a simple question that nobody had properly asked before. What if we stopped fighting nature and started speaking its language? What if technology didn't conquer biology, but merged with it? What if the machines we built could grow, adapt, and die like everything else that lives? The answer is everywhere around you now. The building to your left is 400 stories tall, but it's not engineered in the old way. It's cultivated, grown from a seed the size of a house over the course of 30 years. Its structure is stronger than steel because it's not trying to resist gravity. It's negotiating with it. Inside that tower, 20,000 people live and work in spaces that reconfigure themselves based on need, mood, and season. The building knows when someone is lonely and opens pathways to communal spaces. It knows when someone needs solitude and grows private gardens in forgotten corners. Architecture became therapy. You pass through a district where the air shimmers differently. This is a memory zone. The buildings here are older, not ancient, but preserved from the early days of the Reformation. You can see the transition in the structures. The bottom floors still show traces of concrete and steel, the old bones. But halfway up, the materials change. Stone becomes something that breathes. Metal transforms into networks of golden threads that pulse with light. These buildings are living history, documents written in matter itself. A child asks her father what those golden threads are. He kneels beside her, pointing upward. That's how we learned to talk to energy, he says, to ask it politely to go where we need it instead of forcing it through dead wires. You keep walking. The city rises and falls around you in organic waves. There are no straight lines here, no grid system. The streets curve and spiral according to principles that took decades to understand. They follow magnetic flows in the earth itself. They trace patterns that minimize psychological stress. Urban planners in this era aren't architects, they're composers. They arrange space the way musicians arrange sound, creating rhythms and harmonies in the geography of daily life. You enter a plaza where water moves upward. A fountain in the center defies gravity, pulling liquid into spiraling columns that dance and separate and reunite 30 feet above the ground. Children run through the suspended streams, laughing as droplets pause in mid-air before gently falling. This isn't technology showing off. This is infrastructure as art. The water is being purified as it moves, cleaned of everything that doesn't belong. By the time it completes its dance and returns to the pool below, it's cleaner than rain. Everything has multiple purposes now. Beauty is never just beauty. It's always working. The gardens that cover every surface aren't decoration. They're the lungs of the city. The sculptures that populate public spaces aren't art installations. They're atmospheric processes, pulling carbon from the air and storing it in crystalline forms that glow at night. The city is a machine, but it's a machine made of life. This took time. Your grandparents lived through the transition. They told you stories about the resistance, about people who were terrified when buildings started growing instead of being built, who feared the merging of biology and technology, who thought humanity was giving up control. But control was always an illusion. The old world proved that. The floods proved that. The heat proved that. The extinctions proved that. Humanity didn't lose control in the Reformation. They finally admitted they never had it. And in that admission, they found something better: partnership, collaboration with the planet that birthed them. You reach a bridge that spans a river running through the city's heart. The water below is so clear you can see fish, real fish, not synthetic approximations, species that were extinct in 2090, brought back through genetic archives and patience. The river itself was dead for 70 years, poisoned beyond recognition. Now it's alive again, cleaned by trillions of microorganisms designed to eat pollution and excrete nutrients. Nature didn't return on its own. Humans invited it back, apologized to it, made space for it. You cross the bridge, and the texture beneath your feet changes. Softer now, almost moss-like. This section of the city is younger, grown in the last decade. You can tell by the vibrancy of the colors, by the way the structures still seem eager, almost playful in their configurations. Give them another 20 years and they'll settle, mature, become stately and calm like the older districts. Cities age now like people do. Ahead, your destination rises into view, the Convergence Tower. Not a workplace in the ancient sense, more like a hive of human thought, where people gather to solve problems too complex for individuals, where minds link through interfaces so subtle you forget you're connected to anything beyond yourself. You've been summoned there today for a project, something about ocean restoration, about teaching coral to grow in new patterns. You're not a scientist. You're a pattern reader, someone who sees connections others miss. The city identified this talent in you when you were young, not through tests, through observation, through watching how you moved through space, how you solved problems, how you played. The city raised you as much as your parents did, guided you toward your purpose without forcing anything. You arrive at the tower's base. The entrance isn't a door. It's a membrane that recognizes you and opens like a mouth. You step through into air that tastes different, enriched with oxygen and something else, something that sharpens thought. The interior is impossible. Spaces that shouldn't fit inside the exterior dimensions, rooms that exist partially in other geometric configurations. You stopped trying to understand it years ago. Some things you just accept. You rise through the levels without stairs or elevators. The floor simply lifts you, carrying you upward through spiraling chambers where others work on projects you can't fathom. Someone is teaching lightning to be gentle. Someone else is composing new forms of mathematics using sound. A child sits alone in a sphere of floating water, eyes closed, communicating with dolphins 3,000 miles away. This is work now, not labor, not productivity in the old sense. Purpose, contribution. The thing you're good at and the thing the world needs, perfectly aligned. You reach your level and step off into a garden suspended in the sky. 7 people wait for you in the garden. You recognize 3 of them. The others are new faces, but their presence feels familiar somehow, like you've met them in dreams or distant memories. One woman stands with her hand resting on a tree that grows sideways, its trunk parallel to the floor, defying everything except its own nature. She's humming, not a melody you know, something older, something that the tree seems to respond to, its leaves shifting color from green to silver. You sit without being invited. A cushion rises from the floor to meet you. The circle is complete now. 8 minds gathered around a problem that spans an ocean. On the ground between you, a pool of liquid light begins to form. Not a screen, not a projection, something more direct. The water itself becomes information, becomes vision. You see the Pacific as it exists today. Coral cities stretching for hundreds of miles, reefs restored beyond their original glory, fish populations that eclipse anything from the fossil record. But there are gaps, dead zones where nothing will grow, places where the ocean floor remembers too much damage, where the molecular memory of pollution runs so deep that even the healing organisms can't penetrate. You see these zones in the liquid light as dark spaces, voids, wounds that won't close. The woman who was humming speaks. "We've tried forcing it," she says, "introducing aggressive species, carpeting the dead zones with engineered bacteria, but life can't be bullied. We learned that 200 years ago." An older man nods slowly. His eyes are clouded with age, but there's something sharp behind them. Something that's seen enough failures to recognize the shape of wisdom. "Life requires invitation," he says. "Permission. We're here to figure out what the ocean needs to hear, what language will convince it to try again. This is the work, not engineering solutions, not forcing outcomes, listening, translating, finding the words that matter in languages humans are still learning to speak." You watch the dark zones pulse in the liquid light, and something occurs to you. A pattern you've seen before, not in water, in people. Trauma, you think, leaves similar scars. A young man across from you leans forward. He's younger than you, maybe 20, but his hands move through the liquid light with confidence, reshaping the image, zooming into one of the dead zones, showing the molecular structure of the sea floor. "It's not just damaged," he says, "it's defended. The substrate has formed barriers, chemical walls that prevent new life from taking root. It's protecting itself from further harm." The woman stops humming. "So we're not healing a wound," she says quietly. "We're negotiating with fear." The room falls silent. Above you, birds that aren't quite birds circle through the open air of the tower's interior. They're messengers, carriers of biological data between projects happening on different floors. One lands on the sideways tree, and the woman extends her hand. The bird deposits something into her palm, a seed, a thought. She examines it and smiles. "What if we don't try to heal it at all?" she asks. Everyone looks at her. You feel your mind opening to the possibility before you fully understand it. This is how insight works now, not through individual genius, through collective resonance, through 8 minds breathing together until they start thinking as one organism. "What if we accept the scar?" she continues. "What if those dead zones become something new, not coral reefs, something else, something that never existed before? A new form of ocean ecosystem built on different principles." The older man closes his eyes. You watch him process this. Watch centuries of assumptions being questioned. In the old world, this moment would be conflict, debate, someone defending their position, someone else attacking it. But here, now, it's just exploration, testing an idea to see if it holds weight, if it serves life. "The ocean has been trying to tell us something," he finally says. "We've been so focused on restoring what was lost that we haven't listened to what wants to emerge." You feel it then, the shift, the moment when a group stops pushing against a problem and starts moving with it. The liquid light between you begins to change. The dark zones stop being voids. They become potential, canvas, space for something unprecedented. Your hands move without conscious thought, shaping possibilities in the light, creating structures that blend the familiar with the impossible. What if the dead zones became gardens for species that thrive in scarred environments? What if trauma became habitat? The young man picks up the thread. His fingers dance through the projection, adding details. We could introduce pioneer organisms, not to heal the damage, but to build on it, to create complexity from simplicity, the way life always has. You watch ecosystems bloom in the liquid light, strange architectures of survival, creatures that bond with broken substrates, plants that draw energy from chemical defenses. Within minutes, you've sketched out 3 decades of work, a project that will outlive everyone in this room. That will become the inheritance you leave for people not yet born. This is how humanity builds now, not for themselves, for generations they'll never meet. The woman begins humming again, and this time you understand. She's not making sound, she's testing frequencies, finding the vibration that matches the feeling in the room, the resonance of minds aligned. When she hits the right note, you all feel it, a harmonic that makes your bones sing. The tree responds, growing new branches. Outside the tower, the city continues its ancient modern dance. Millions of people moving through their days, each one a cell in an organism so vast that no single mind can comprehend it. But you don't need to comprehend it. You just need to play your part. Add your note to the symphony. Trust that the whole knows what it's doing, even when the parts feel lost. The meeting dissolves without formal ending. People rise when they're ready, drift toward other projects, other purposes. You stay a moment longer, watching the liquid light fade back into ordinary floor. The vision of those transformed dead zones lingers in your mind. You think about the ocean, about its patience, about how it waited centuries for humans to stop hurting it and start listening. Everything that matters requires patience now. Quick solutions were the poison of the old world, the addiction to immediate results, to quarterly profits and instant gratification. Your ancestors almost destroyed themselves chasing speed. You live in the world built by those who learned to slow down, to think in centuries, to plant trees whose shade they'd never sit under. You leave the tower, the membrane closes behind you like a gentle goodbye. Outside, the afternoon has deepened into gold. The sky membrane above filters the light into something amber and warm. You don't return home immediately. Instead, you walk, just walk, through districts you've never seen. Past people living lives you'll never fully understand. A couple sits on a bench that grows around them, forming a private alcove. They're not speaking, just holding hands, just being. You wonder what problems they're carrying, what joys, what small victories and quiet desperations. The city holds all of it, makes space for every human emotion, for loneliness and connection, for ambition and surrender, for the whole messy spectrum of being alive. You find yourself at the edge of the city, not the border. Cities don't have borders anymore. They fade gradually into wilderness, blurring the line until you can't tell where human intention ends and natural chaos begins. But there are places where the density thins, where the towers give way to meadows, where the careful orchestration of urban life releases into something wilder. You stand in tall grass that moves without wind. Ahead, the forest waits. Not planted, not managed, truly wild. The only kind of wilderness that matters anymore. The kind that exists because humans chose to leave it alone. You've heard that beyond those trees, wolves run. Real wolves. Descendants of the ones brought back from genetic memory. They don't fear humans because they've never had reason to. The grass around your feet begins to glow. Bioluminescence triggered by your presence. Blue and green light rippling outward like water. You kneel and touch the earth. It's warm, alive with processes you can't see. Trillions of organisms working in cooperation so perfect it looks like magic. The soil remembers everything, every footstep, every seed, every creature that ever died and returned to the cycle. You are standing on memory itself. Behind you the city hums its evening song, lights beginning to emerge as the sky membrane dims. Not electric lights, living light. The same bioluminescence that surrounds you now, scaled up and distributed through millions of buildings. The city doesn't use power in the old sense. It generates life, and life generates light as a byproduct. Illumination is just biology being generous. A child's voice reaches you from somewhere distant, laughter, pure and unself-conscious. You turn and see a family in the meadow. A father teaching his daughter to read the sky, pointing at patterns in the membrane above, showing her how clouds that aren't quite clouds predict tomorrow's weather. The child jumps and reaches toward the sky as if she could touch it, as if distance is just another game. Maybe she's right. You've lived your whole life in a world where the impossible became ordinary, where humanity looked at the edge of extinction and chose transformation instead of surrender. Your great-grandparents lived in a different world, one of concrete and desperation, of traffic and pollution and cities that slowly killed the people living in them. They couldn't imagine this. Standing in glowing grass at the edge of a living city, watching wolves return to forests that remember them. But they built it anyway, not for themselves. They built it knowing they'd never see it complete, knowing the reward for their sacrifice would go to strangers, to you, to that child reaching for the sky, to generations stretching forward into a future that gets to be different because someone chose differently 200 years ago. This is the inheritance, not wealth, not property, not things you can hold. The inheritance is possibility, the knowledge that transformation is real, that humanity can change course, that the species capable of nearly destroying its own planet is also capable of healing it, of becoming something worth being. You think about the ocean project, about dead zones becoming new ecosystems, about trauma transformed into habitat. It's a metaphor that extends beyond water. Humanity's own scars became the foundation for everything around you now. The mistakes weren't erased. They were integrated, learned from, built upon. Every structure in the city contains memory of what came before. The failures and the suffering and the almost ending. Nothing is wasted anymore, not even pain, especially not pain, because pain is just information, data about what doesn't work. And if you listen carefully enough, if you're patient enough, pain will teach you exactly what needs to change. The old world ran from pain, medicated it, denied it, pretended everything was fine while the planet burned. This world faces pain directly, sits with it, asks what it needs to say. The entire Reformation was an act of collective grief, transformed into collective purpose. Humanity mourned what it had destroyed, and then got to work growing something new from the ashes. The child in the meadow falls down. You hear her cry. A small sound, not fear, just surprise. Her father doesn't rush to pick her up. He waits. Lets her decide if she needs help or if she can manage this herself. After a moment, she stands, brushes grass from her knees. The glowing blades stick to her skin for a moment before releasing. She laughs again. The fall already forgotten, already integrated into the adventure. This is resilience, not the kind that pretends nothing hurts. The kind that hurts, processes, and continues. You watch the family fade into the evening, heading back toward the city lights. Soon you'll follow them. Return to your apartment where the walls remember you. Sleep in a bed that reads your dreams. Wake tomorrow to another ordinary day in a world that your ancestors would call paradise. But it's not paradise. Paradise suggests perfection, suggests an end to struggle. This world still has problems. People still suffer, still lose loved ones, still wrestle with meaning and purpose and all the ancient questions that come with consciousness. The Reformation didn't end human difficulty, it just removed the artificial ones, the unnecessary suffering created by systems that served profit instead of life. What remains is the real work, the work of being human, of loving and losing, of creating and destroying, of finding meaning in a universe that doesn't provide it pre-packaged, but at least now you get to do that work in a world that supports you, that wants you to thrive, that isn't actively trying to extract value from your existence. You take one last look at the forest. Somewhere in there, wolves are hunting, following instincts millions of years old. They don't know about the Reformation, don't care about human history. They just are, perfectly themselves, doing what wolves do. And somehow, impossibly, there's room for them now. Room for wilderness and civilization to coexist. For human ambition and natural chaos to share the same space. This is the lesson. The one truth that took centuries to learn. There's enough space, enough resources, enough beauty, enough meaning. The scarcity was always a lie, a story humans told themselves to justify taking more than they needed. The planet was never too small, human appetite was just too large. You turn toward home. The grass releases you with gentle reluctance. Your footsteps leave glowing prints that fade slowly behind you. Tomorrow, you'll return to the Convergence Tower. Continue the ocean project. Add your small piece to a puzzle that won't be complete for decades. And that's okay. Better than okay. Because you understand now what your ancestors didn't. You're not building for yourself. You're building for the child in the meadow, for her children. For people who won't exist for another century, but who deserve to inherit a world that works. A world that remembers how close it came to ending and chose instead to begin again. The city welcomes you back. Lights pulsing in greeting, streets adjusting to carry you home. All around, people ending their days, returning to spaces that know them, to partners and children and solitude and community. Each person carrying their own universe of experience, their own joys and sorrows, their own small part in the massive, beautiful, impossible project of being alive in 2296. This is your normal. This Tuesday, that would be a miracle to anyone from the past. You don't take it for granted, can't. Because you were raised on stories of what was lost, what was saved, what was built from the ruins of a world that almost wasn't. You reach your building as full night falls. The entrance recognizes you, welcomes you. You rise through familiar levels toward your apartment, toward rest, toward dreams that the bed will read and the city will remember. And tomorrow you'll wake again, open your eyes to living light, step into another day in the next era of human civilization. Another chance to add your note to the song. If this moved you, if it made you think about what we're building toward, leave a like. Subscribe to keep exploring these possible futures. And in the comments, tell me, what would your normal day look like 200 years from now? What world are you hoping to build? The future isn't predetermined. It's a choice we make every single day. And maybe, just maybe, we'll choose as wisely as the people in this story did. Sleep well. Dream of gardens growing in the sky, of oceans healing, of cities that breathe, of a world where normal means something beautiful. You've earned the rest.